So, our scripture passage today is from Paul's letter to the Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast. It's a very short passage, so if you don't mind, I'm going to read it again. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So we have this year been on an adventure. You probably have seen this a couple times. A valuable year looking for a deeper meaning. Every month we've focused on a different value, except the first one, of course, was deeper meaning just as a topic. February we did kindness. March we did forgiveness. And this month we're doing grace. Grace. This is going to be the hardest one for me. I put it on there, and I selected all of them. So it's my own fault. But it's going to be the hardest one for me because grace is not an easy concept. It's a churchy word. I work really hard not to use churchy words. I try really hard to use words that would be accessible to anyone, whether you've been in the pew your whole life or this is the very first time you've been here in a church at all. I try really hard to talk about God and faith in a way that everyone would understand. So we use the word grace in normal life, not religious life, in life, in ways like this, graceful. But that's not the same thing as grace. She walks so graceful. It's just not the same thing. It's just such a difficult word. And so I have had a really hard time. And I can't go to Amazon and hit in grace, Amazon, to find a book on grace. There are some, but they're still having the same problem. They're very churchy. So I've had such a hard time. But I think I understand why it's been difficult for me. Grace is one of those words that as soon as you try to define it, you have not even come close to it. And it sounds wrong. Sometimes people say, well, grace is forgiveness. Well, it's not forgiveness. It is, but that's not near what grace is. And we've already covered forgiveness last month, so I'm not going to do that again. So it's one of those words that once you start defining it, you realize it's much bigger than any simple definition. And so one of my struggles in trying to get my head around a working definition for me is that every time I said, no, it's not that, I had a hard time feeling like it was anything. This is a word that is foundational for Christian faith, and your pastor is saying that I felt the emptiness of that word. So I had to worry, well, what's wrong with me? Amazing Grace is the most famous Christian song ever. And I can't even figure out what grace is, how to define it. What is it? How can I give it to you today? So you can count on this definition evolving and changing over this long month. I had to pick a 5-Sunday month to talk about. Really hard word. But today, this is my working definition. Grace is a gift. And it really well with the kids, because that's really the best that I can do with right now. Now, Wesley, the founder of Methodism, he had a lot to say about grace. Now, back then, it was not so churchy a word, or maybe everybody was going to church, I don't know. But everything he preached about was about grace, and he had a lot of things to say about grace. So I am going to touch on that just a little bit, because it is somewhat helpful to organize your thoughts about the way that John Wesley used it. But I'm going to admit that they're also churchy words, so please forgive me. He had 3 ways of talking about grace, 3 definitions, 3 adjectives he attached to grace that helped kind of organize an understanding of grace. One, he said, one was prevenient grace. If you want to know God's presence, then you can count on God being ahead of you. I like to say that this is the red carpet of God before we even know God is there. Prevenient means come before. God is before us. God is before us, making our way for us, anticipating our needs. The very breath that you're about to take is grace, is gift. You did not pay for it. You did not make it. It is given to you by God the Creator. God makes a way for us to even live before we are aware of it. That is prevenient grace. Before we even know it, God is working in our lives. So that's prevenient grace. That's probably my favorite one. I'll let you know ahead of time. That's my favorite one. The second one John Wesley uses is justifying grace. We talked a lot about forgiveness last month. Justifying grace is it involves forgiveness, but it is even more. It's even more than saying, I'm sorry. It is saying, I'm sorry and you're forgiven, and I'm going to make it right. Justifying is when it's made right, when the brokenness is made right. Whatever mistakes we do in life, even ones that we're not aware of, we can ask for forgiveness and make right with God, our Creator. Justifying grace. Making it right. Not my favorite, I'll admit. Not my favorite. I know, I'm so bad to even tell you that. The last one I love also. John Wesley's third one is sanctifying grace. Another word we never use, sanctifying grace. Now, in his day, he had people that believed that they received full sanctification. And they talked about it in ways that we don't talk about it. They believed that they were made perfect. We absolutely do not believe that we're perfect. This is the way I like to think about it. That we are so aware of God in our life that we have asked forgiveness for all the things that we have done wrong, and that we're living the very life that God intended us to be doing. If we are living the very life that God intended us to be doing, we can experience sanctifying grace. So I'll talk about it this way. I am standing right here, and there is one path, I'm going to put it to the cross here, really one path that is perfect, that in all things would be in synchronized fashion to what God really wants for my life. But there's also a whole lot of other paths I could take, right? I mean, just every other direction is other paths, all the way around. So I am right here. And when I recognize prevenient grace is that God has a path. Justifying grace is when I am going the absolute opposite way of that path. And I need justifying grace to correct me. And then often I'll kind of get the general direction of God in my life, and I'll come close, and I'll feel like I've got it. But then if I happen to be on the right path, there is no comparison to being here. It is so right. It is so amazing, and it is so recognizing God in my life that why would I want to be here? It's close, and I know God's present in my life, but it's not the same. Now, this is what grace is about, is that no matter where we are in life, we can access it. We can recognize God in the world. So in other words, I can lay in bed in the morning and wonder about my day that's laid out before me. I have two paths, multiple paths, but my favorite is to wake up and start worrying. I don't know if anybody else is like that. It's quiet. I'm the first to wake up in the morning. And I just start my engine running. I'm going to worry about everything. And I just get worried. I get anxious. And my list of things I need to do is longer than I can ever accomplish. And where am I facing? Totally away. Totally away. I could wake up and be grateful for the morning. I don't know about you, but today it was really easy to do that. With the sun, finally, look at our stained glass windows. I mean, just glorious. I could wake up with the day grateful for my breath and grateful for the glorious day given. God, what do you intend for me today? What is my step to you today? My unique self that you have created, I can be in this world in a way that no one else can, and it fits to your creation in a unique way. What can I do today? Then at lunchtime, that all is prevenient grace, that God has it all laid out. So at lunchtime, I pause. Maybe I say grace over my meal. Another way we use that word. But I pause and recognize God and take stock of what I have done with the day. And usually by then, I'm ready to say, I was not perfect in what I just did. That did not go well. And it's about then that I'm saying, God, forgive me that I am not a perfect servant, that I have not done all that I could do, or that I've done things wrong even. I've hurt where I did not intend. God, forgive me. And it's about noon that I need a good meal of justifying grace. Forgive me, make it right. Justifying grace is a great lunch. Then at bedtime, I'm back in bed again. My favorite way to go to sleep at night is with a beautiful dose of sanctifying grace. Beautiful. By then, I'm laying down, and I've worked through a lot of stuff. I've worked through a lot of stuff. I've recognized God's presence in the world. I've asked forgiveness for things I've done wrong. And I'm laying there recognizing that God has a plan. And that when I am present in my life in the way that God intended, it is unbelievable. It is beautiful. It is more full than we can imagine. We all deserve more than we really get. And that is ready to be given to us by God. See, there is no easy way to pin down this tiny word called grace. One of the ways that we do it is with communion. We talk about it this way, that we are justified, we are made right because someone made it right, and that someone was Jesus. Like I said, it's not my favorite. I am so grateful for what Jesus did, but I don't really like to talk about the sacrifice Jesus made for me. I'd rather say that Jesus' life was a model for my life. Jesus' life was a model for my life. So as we take of this bread, let us feel the oneness, one loaf, one body, all connected to this model that Jesus gave us, how to be a Christian, how to be a real person, how to be the person that God created us to be. Know that it was a sacrifice. Jesus' life was a sacrifice. And he would do it over and over and over as a model for us to live. Gracious God, we are so thankful for your life's model. We partake of this bread to remember. And yes, he did die on the cross, and we are grateful. Now, the early church did this one thing when they took communion. It was one loaf, one body. Everyone was in unison, didn't matter who you were. But they also gave money for the poor. We have 2 baskets here. That money goes to our local needy fund. Every week people come and ask for assistance. That money goes directly to them. So as you come, if you give offering to that as well.